Hey, my friends, welcome back to the Uncommodified podcast. My name is Tim Windsor, and this episode is going to be a little bit different. So I'm not going to wax eloquent or try to wax eloquent with some wonderful introduction tonight because it doesn't need that thing. It's going to be a different kind of conversation, and it's a conversation that's going to be different for a couple of reasons. We're going to explore a topic I've never talked about before, and I'm going to do it with some really good friends of mine. And so I want to introduce to you, my listeners, some good friends. It's Aidan and Leanne Hennebry. We like to call them the Hennebrys, which is a great way to look at it. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I've had the pleasure of knowing Aidan and Leanne for, oh my gosh, now I'm going to feel old now for a second. So how long have we known each other? I'm going to say it's probably 8-9 years.
Oh, no, it's at least 10. I mean, if we count you as the father of the groom when we shot your husband's wedding, when we photographed his wedding, that's more than 10 years ago now.
By the way, just to be clear, not my husband's wedding, although that's another show. That's another show, Aidan. Hey, okay, I've been outed now on my show. No, not my husband's wedding, my son's wedding.
He was the husband.
I know. But every once in a while, doesn't Chris feel like my husband? I'm seriously, like my son is so mature. He feels a little bit.
You call him Mr. Windsor, the senior Windsor.
I call him. This conversation. Can you imagine, listeners? This conversation is starting off well. It's going to be amazing. Yes, you shot the photos at Chris and Emily's wedding. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yes, and that was a great wedding, and you guys did some awesome photography for that. And then, full disclosure, I've hired Aidan for different projects over the years because he's a graphic designer. We'll talk about that. And Aidan was the designer behind my book, Uncommodified. So we've been on a long journey together, and of course, then we get to go over and we get to meet the lovely and talented Leanne, and that's awesome. And so, but tonight it's not going to be about the amazing business that Aidan runs that you're going to want to learn about and hire him to do some work for you. Shameless plug. Not about that tonight. We're not talking about their great photography business that if you want great photos, you got to talk to them because they do great photography. It's not about the graphic design. It's not about Leanne and her wonderful motherly skills, although it is tonight. And Aidan's amazing husband and father skills. Because we're going to be talking about Aidan and Leanne's family and their parenting of their kids and the wonderful gift that their kids are, and also some of the challenges as a family that they are processing and dealing with. And I want to start by saying, you guys are some of, if not the best parents that I have ever observed. You guys are awesome parents. I remember the time we came to your house where you guys live now, and just watching you with your kids, and particularly bedtime. Like seriously, I want to be at the Hennebrys' house at bedtime. Because there are some serious bedtime stories that happen. And Aidan, you believe you came in with some massive teddy bear it was craziness.
Okay, yeah.
And this is just all that you guys are. So first of all, tell us a little bit about you and your family. How did you guys get together? How long you been together? Tell us about your kids. And then let's start a conversation, particularly maybe about Leo's journey. But
yeah,
what's going on with you guys?
Yeah, so we have been a couple for over 13 years now.
Yeah.
Married for almost 11, which is exciting and fun. I fell in love with Leanne the first time I saw her in a grocery store in Kitchener, Waterloo, and the rest is history.
Do you remember the aisle? What aisle, Aidan?
Sort of. It was not down an aisle, it was in front of the aisle. But she was wearing black leather jacket, flat brim hat, skinny jeans, Tom's shoes. Oh yeah, I remember the whole thing.
Look at that. Oh, okay. I love it.
I was very into Leanne very quickly, and sometimes people would ask Leanne, "When did you know Aidan liked you?" And Leanne's answer is often,
well, he never didn't.
Yeah.
He never did.
A well-known fact.
A factoid. I like it.
She rejected me a couple times, and eventually I convinced her to be my girlfriend, which was awesome.
Well, he's younger than me, so in college it felt more obvious because I was finishing one course and he was fresh out of high school.
Yeah.
So he was 4 years younger.
Oh. Just so you know, you're like you're like Mrs. Windsor. I'm 5 years younger than Mrs. Windsor.
Okay.
I like to say she was my babysitter, but it's not true. But I love the story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be quite a story. So, anywho, we'll fast forward a little bit, but yeah, we 2 years later we got married. It was a beautiful wedding day, and then a couple years after that, we decided to start a family, as many couples do. And so, first came along our son Leo, and as of today, as of the time we're recording this podcast, he is 7.5. And then, is that right? 7.5?
Almost.
Almost seven and a half.
Birthday.
And then 2 years after that, we had our daughter Betty in 2020, just before COVID like truly hit the world. So we were lucky that we didn't have to deal with weird hospital restrictions and stuff like that. And then it took us a little bit longer to have our third child, Walt. We had experienced a couple miscarriages. We had a miscarriage before Leo as well. And so we weren't totally sure if we were going to continue having kids. And we kind of said, we'll take one last kick of the can. And then sure enough, that was the one that stuck. And then 9 months later, we had our youngest, Walter. And he is now 2, right? So
Walt's 2 now.
Yeah.
Walt is 2, yeah.
Okay, I got to ask you about the names, but before I do this, like I'm so off my normal culture in my conversation because I decided, not to start the same, and I clearly am a creature of habit. I forgot this is an uncorked conversation. I forgot that I need to have a drink. So before we get too far into this, I need to have a drink, and I'm having a nice Chianti. I know that you guys are not big alcohol drinkers, so we got a Coca-Cola. Yeah. And we got a Monster energy drink, which I don't think is any better than alcohol. But anyways, cheers to you guys. I'm going to have a drink as we do this. Okay, I got to ask you about the names because these are non-traditional kid names. Come on now. Leo?
Leo came like it was one of those names you talk about when you're dating and like, if we had kids, what would you name them? And Leo was one of those names, so we just had it forever. We can't recall who said it, when, and then it just was our. And we didn't even really have a girl's name. We didn't know what we were having any of our children. So Leo was. We just felt it's probably a boy. And
now is Leo short for a longer form? Or is it Leo?
Nope.
It's Leo. No. Okay. All right. And what does Leo mean? Does it have a meaning?
I mean, it's like
Leo,
Greek or Latin or something for lion. So.
Well, yeah, so lion. Okay, I like that one. Okay, now next child name.
It's Betty, and
Betty.
Yes, and we got really into watching Mad Men when we had Leo, and our late nights with the baby.
Yeah.
And then we just watched through all the seasons, and then there's a Betty on it. We're like, gotta bring that name back. I like that name.
Yeah, she's a fiery character on the show. She's a 1960s, blonde bombshell housewife, but she's got spunk and character, and that almost in a way feels like foreshadowing because our Betty she's a firecracker as well. So
that's awesome. And then we have Walt, short for Walter.
Yes, that is short for Walter.
Okay, Walt, come on now. This is not a traditional boy's name in 2024, 25.
It's an older one. It was inspired by like Aidan having read the biography of Walt Disney.
Okay.
And just really enjoying that. And we're like, okay. I like Walter. I'm like, I'll always call him Walt, though. Walter will be like if he's in trouble.
He's in trouble, yeah.
So he's mostly Walt or Wally. He gets the nickname.
Wally. Okay. Well, at least he didn't get Mickey. Perfect. Or some other name. So I love your kids' names, by the way, because they are throwback to a bit of nostalgia. And you guys have that vibe. You guys, it's like you got it. You might have, if you believe in time travel, which I know you don't, but I might. You guys. Yeah, but you guys are definitely got a vibe from a retro world, which I really like about the way you guys, your style, the way you do life. You're in the doghouse right now, which is this. How many square feet is this office?
99 square feet. It's 11 by 9. Interior dimensions are 11 by 9. So, 99 square feet.
So coming to us from the doghouse, which is also your design studio called the Doghouse, which I also think is your business name, the Doghouse Design.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
we got the name because when we moved into this house, this was like, it had some doggy doors and a fence around. And like, I think the old owners bred dogs.
Okay.
So we just started referring it to as the doghouse, and then it was like branded that.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So I was sad because when I first heard about the doghouse, I was sure it was going to be DAWG, but no, it's not. It's DOG,
Yeah.
which is fine. Less sexy to me than the doghouse DAWG, but it works for
Traditional
me.
spelling.
No, it works.
Traditional spelling.
All right, listen, let's take the conversation now out of sort of this happy-go-lucky world and let's get back into the reality of parenting. So you got 3 kids, which is, no, from today's standards, 3 kids is probably not the average anymore. So that's more than the average number of children. And you also have you've had a unique gift given to you along the way. And I would love to talk to you about that. And you obviously, all your children are a unique gift to you, but you have a child that has a unique gift and some challenges, and you guys are processing that as a family, and that's part of what I want to explore with you tonight.
Yeah, so Leo, our eldest, he has autism. He was diagnosed, he was 4.
Yep.
Well, he just started kindergarten, and which I think is a little late to be diagnosed. And it had nothing to do with us inquiring, but more to do with the COVID slowdown of the medical system. And so, like, the appointment to be diagnosed for that took 2 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he wasn't talking at 2, and that's when you start to be like, okay, maybe speech. And then through that, and they thought, oh, I don't think autism at that point, because he had decent eye contact, and that can be that's a major indicator when you're quite young, obviously, because there's less comparison to kids at that age. But by the time he got diagnosed, more
They're more
milestones and the way he interacts and stuff became more obvious of autism. So when I brought him to that appointment, I was trying to prepare myself like that's what I'm gonna hear today. So. Yeah, and he still doesn't talk. He is a nonverbal autistic kid, and we would classify him as how did I say, not like severe? Like
yeah,
he's
labels,
not high functioning.
Yeah,
like as each year goes on, like how we describe it, is the gap between him and an kid his age, an average kid his age, seems to get larger with like our 2-year-old in a sense has crossed way more milestones and understands and can comprehend and do more than our 7-year-old.
Okay. So can I ask you, so you're having this experience with Leo, you recognize that his development is not tracking the way you might expect it to track. And you're starting to process all this, and now you're going to go to the doctor, you're going to understand this. How does this feel for you guys, and what's going on for you guys in those beginning days?
You want to take that? You want me?
Well, I cried. Shocker.
It was Leanne's birthday too,
Yeah.
which I just find a unique, interesting anniversary, that the day that we were officially
Easy
given the
to remember.
diagnosis was Leanne's birthday. So, yeah.
It's like, yeah, I really felt like I knew it was coming, and I was trying to prepare myself, but like, you still cry when the truth truly is revealed. So it was like a bit of a grieving process at first, because I'd say, like, everyone kind of tries to give you hope, and you hold on to that, like, oh, I know of kids who don't talk till they were 7, or till they, you hear those types of stories, and like when it is younger, it is more about the vocabulary, but as they get older, it is like they're not comprehending and they're not responding, and etc. So you're like, it's more than just speech. So it was like, yeah, a little bit of grieving, but then, like, okay, it's also like nothing's different, and let's see what we can do from here.
Yeah, I would say for me, like I was working the day that Leanne took Leo to his appointment, and so um, like I knew there was an assessment, and so I figured, okay, Leanne will call me, and I think in my mind I was not expecting that we would actually get a diagnosis that day, so I was just kind of not in the frame of mind to receive such news. And so when Leanne called me, and very quickly she was crying on the phone, I'm like, uh-oh. And so she had shared it's autism. I remember it very much, feels just a little bit of shell shock, right? That you're like, oh boy. I took the rest of the day off work. I went for a long walk, cried a bit in the park, just like kind of tried to start coming to terms with it anyways. And definitely, we kind of, when we reflect on it, we say there was kind of at the most, it was about a week where there was a lot of, grieving. And what I would say, grieving in the sense of like, we do remind ourselves, like, we're grateful he doesn't have cancer. I don't think he's going to die imminently. Like, it could be much worse, right? And
Right.
so what we were grieving in that moment was really kind of the future that we thought Leo might have, right? Because it's our first go around as parents, and you dream for your kid's future. I think as most parents do, okay, go to school, grow up, buy a car, move out, all these different things. And so we were quickly kind of coming to terms with like, okay, at best the future is a really big question mark right now, and we kind of need to just live in that tension now. So it was interesting.
So, it just as you described that, and first of all, I appreciate the conversation. And again, if you're listening in, I always say, listeners, you're listening in for a reason. So, first of all, if you know somebody in your world that this is the kind of podcast subject that they ought to listen to, I'd encourage you to make sure they find the podcast. If you're listening in and maybe you're just listening in so you can understand this journey a little bit more and you can have a little bit more compassion for others, maybe you have a similar journey. I don't know why you might be listening, but if you're listening, you're always listening for a reason. I'm always going to say that to you. So I think throughout this conversation, no, I don't think I know, you're going to find some opportunities to do some self-reflection about who you are, about if you happen to have the privilege of having children, who they are, the hopes and dreams that we have for our kids as parents, and all of the things that go around with this. And the one thing I want to say to both of you guys, I mean, when Pam and I came over for dinner at your house, it was a while ago now, I will say that both of us left again just watching you guys parent all your children. But there were times where Leo was struggling a little bit that night, and just watching you guys interact with him with care and concern. At the same time, though, with a framework of there is, getting this understanding that, hey, there are some things that Leo can understand and comprehend, and so you parented him, or you interacted with him in such a way that you wanted to provide some framework, even some accountability for him in his behavior. At the same time, this deep sense of compassion, and I just want to say it was really awesome for us just to watch that. And of course, we don't have experience with this, so we don't understand all these things. But I do want to say, as somebody looking in from the outside, it's really awesome to watch how you guys are parenting your kids and parenting Leo in a way that is just so wonderfully positive. And I don't know if I could do that, to be really frank. So I just want to say I really appreciate that about you guys. So I'm interested to know, when did you have any experience like with autism, or any grid for it? Meaning, so when they say diagnosis Leo has autism, or do you have a comparator in your life, or have you done a bunch of research already and you go, we know this means X, or are you just free falling and go, we're not really sure what any of this really means?
Do you have any, like, before, like, knowing me?
Not really, no.
So mine would be, my brother is. My brother's 8 years younger than me,
Okay.
and he is autistic.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he's high functioning. He's a cool kid. But yeah, I knew a bit about my journey his journey with my mom, of how like it started with speech therapy when he was really young, speech therapist saying I think it's more than just speech, getting diagnosed, and then like, you know, there's a spectrum obviously in autism, and I think throughout his years like he would shift within that as he developed and grew, but he speaks. He was a cute kid. Like, he was 8 years younger, so there was kind of like a slight motherly role of me, like real big
Right.
sister who just loved to take care of him, and he was a sweet, cuddly kid. And like I would have different memories than like my mom being the parent of him. But I don't recall him having much behavioral issues. I know breaking a routine was extremely difficult for him. If you like stopped into a school during his birthday and like you were a person that's not technically should be in that environment, he had no interest in what you had to bring him. It could be his favorite thing, and he's like, why are you here? But yeah, so I did actually have a bit of experience and an understanding, and like right now he can drive. He works pretty much full-time at Costco. He's extremely athletic. He's like a long distance runner, and he does a lot of Special Olympic sports too. So he really gravitated towards athletics. It's great. But yeah, he is my biggest framework of that, and it's interesting too because obviously the difference between like even funding and systems and diagnosing and all that, like from what he was 20
about
years
20 years or so that
like to today, like there's like I have like knowledge of it, and also like our son Leo is also like quite different from him.
Right. So there's this difference, and again, a difference the way that we look at these things in society. We've had some progression in thinking on these things. At the same time, there are those unique challenges. So I'm interested to know if you could sort of frame it this way. So what are you learning about yourselves as individuals and as a couple through this experience? What are you learning about Leo and your kids? What are you learning about others? And by the way, these could be positive or negative learnings, but what is it you're learning along the way? And do you have a sense that this is part of, is there a grand why in this, or is there no grand why in this? I mean, I think a lot of people, we always want to know is there a sense of a grand why? And maybe there isn't, or maybe there's not. But I'm interested to know, like, what are you guys learning along the way that through this journey?
I mean, lots, naturally, and I think that some of that just comes with parenthood in general. That's not exclusive to obviously having a kid with autism specifically. Leo's role in our family is unique for a lot of reasons. One of which is even just different for us and our experience as parents, because Leo is the oldest.
Right.
So Leo is the first one going into school, the first one that went to daycare, the first one that is, quote unquote, reaching certain milestones. Whereas in Leanne's family, Brian was the third, and he was 8 years behind Leanne, who was the oldest. So Leanne's parents kind of, you had a little bit more of a natural framework of like, okay, here's where I expect my kid to be by this age, right? And so without that, it's just like, I mean, it's the only life we know, so it is what it is. But I imagine that is different because we, our kind of expectation of the, level of independence of our kids and things is different just because Leo's the first. But more, at a deep level, and I would say especially something recently, Leanne articulated it so well in a recent conversation we were having. We recognize that as parents of a kid with autism, our lives, all of us, are going to look different than a family that does not have anyone with special needs, right? And one of the things that I think is easy to do is to fixate on all of the things that you lose when you have someone in your family with special needs. So again, kind of going back to our gut reaction, I think it's a fairly normal human gut reaction. In that kind of week prior or week after finding out that Leo had autism, was to really be like, okay, from where we stand today, we have no idea if Leo will ever move out, no idea if he'll ever talk, even, no idea if he'll ever function well in school. Certainly doesn't seem like he may find a partner or grow old with someone other than us. So there was a lot of, we need to not hold on to that so much, and we need to kind of let that go and just kind of let Leo be Leo and love him for that. And so the thing that Leanne articulated really well, though, is, I think of quote unquote kind of regular family activities. Okay, so if you're a mom and a dad with some young kids, something as simple as like going to the movies, right, or going out to the mall and just walking around a store. We have to go into that with a very open mindset of like, this could go horribly, because Leo, like many kids with autism, one of Leo's biggest challenges is transitions between environments and transitions between activities. Those can really overwhelm Leo, stress him out. Part of that is, his lack of comprehension of kind of like what is coming next, right? And so, even we recognize at some point, oh, every time we get in the van to go somewhere, Leo has no idea where we're going. And it must be like Russian roulette to be like, am I going to go somewhere awesome, like my Gigi's house, my grandparents' house, or am I going to go somewhere I hate, like the doctor or school or something like that, right? And so even those were eye-opening moments for us to try to come up with visual cues and things that we could do to communicate to Leo where we were going and what we were doing. So anyways, the movie theater example, we cannot just like take our kids to a movie spontaneously without calling the theater ahead of time or checking in with the manager. Hey, we need to bring certain blankets, certain snacks, headphones for Leo. He may leave halfway through. We may leave with him halfway through, and just have this kind of lowered expectation of going into it. And there are times definitely that we do things like that and it doesn't work out the way we hoped. And we try hard not to get frustrated or disappointed as parents, because we try to just go into it expecting, hey, this may not work. But the flip side of that, and the beauty of it, is that when certain things like that happen and they work out, it takes something that is kind of mundane in the average family's life and it turns it into something like spectacular for us. And that was what Leanne articulated in a really nice way, was like these kind of normal things that you can just get swept up in the hurry of everyday life, they become that much more meaningful and rich for us because we recognize we may not get them. And so when we do, it is that much more sweet and that much more awesome. And so then the challenge for us in our hearts is to not hold that against Leo. And I think we do a pretty good job of that. Yeah. But it enriches the things that can otherwise be quickly forgotten in your daily life.
Yeah, so we went to Moana 2 as our first movie theater. And like, our kids are Disney watching kids. Like, Leo loves Cars, number one.
Toy Story, Monsters Inc.
Toy Story, Monsters Inc. and Coco are probably all up there too. So like, he likes Moana too. He's watched Moana. So like, we are hopeful with the recognition of the characters, and we were like, okay, let's make sure the popcorn, like he likes smart food popcorn, not regular popcorn. And so certain things like that. And we're like, all right. And then our daughter, of course, is thrilled and she's going to want to sit through that whole thing. So we're just like, okay, kind of deciding like Aidan is going to be the one. If someone needs to leave, he's going to leave. And we're like, that'll be the game plan. And he loved it. He sat through the whole thing. And we just were like, this was the greatest family experience ever.
Oh. That's, you know what I love about it too, and maybe it's a good reminder for all of us, is that I think this is the problem for all of us, is we take a lot of this stuff for granted, right? We have an expectation of what quote normal or what regular or what all of these terribly ridiculous terms, because what does it really mean at the end of the day? But the delight that you clearly are taking in this event here. Mm-hmm. And that leads me to a question about like your kids. Obviously, Walt is younger. Betty's a little bit older. How old is Betty now?
5.
So Betty's 5. So tell me, I mean, Betty, you named Betty after, just to be clear, Aidan, you did say you named your daughter after some blonde bombshell uh, on Mad Men. Okay, so just to be clear, okay, that's what. But I get it. That's awesome. I love it. But so that means that she's got a destiny for sure here. So how does Betty process this? And how does that interplay work? Because you have a relationship in your family, Leanne, with your brother, but you were older.
Yep.
How is the tell me about the interplay between particularly Betty and Leo, and what are
Oh,
you seeing in Betty that gives you joy along the way?
well, her middle name is Joy, so she knows
Okay, how
that.
interesting.
Um, honestly, like the interaction between our three children is like something that brings us joy
Uh,
daily. Like, we are always kind of calling up, "Did you see those two doing that together?" Or,
uh,
but like Betty is interesting because she's the second middle, but she's kind of got an older kid vibe because she she does take on Leo's caretaker sometimes.
yeah.
Um, she like encourages him to make noises or sounds. Like he can make a da da sound, kind of for dada, ma for mama a bit, and like when she gets him to do it, she'll be like, he said mama, and she gets
Uh,
so excited. Um, and Leo loves physical touch, physical wrestling, tickling, hugs, like cuddles, like everything. And oh, she'll get right up in there, like just jams her fingers in his, and he loves it, and he runs. And so like there, it's really cool because there's not much of a barrier almost between them for his lack of certain comprehensions and his lack of speaking. That she just gets right in there and plays. So like it's a huge blessing to Leo to have other siblings because in a sense they're going to be his greatest friends because he's Leo. That's just
yep,
who he is. You know, he
right,
doesn't come into school and he's the kid that isn't like everyone else. And
right.
also Leo doesn't really care at all. So in a sense he doesn't care
Mhm.
if he doesn't have friends, but he loves his siblings and Betty is just she's so fantastic with him like and you know he can be behavioral a bit with her.
Mhm.
Um but she's so understanding too and she's quick to forgive. She's quick to try and play with him again and help turn some of his moods around.
Mhm.
Um,
Wow.
she's she's amazing.
Well, I
Yeah.
think we all have some Betty lessons to learn. I think Betty sounds like an inspiration to me, and she ought to be an inspiration to everyone. I mean, again, that's I guess the beauty of kids, right? There's a certain naivety that is just a wonderment. It's unfortunate we lose that as adults often.
Mm.
Although I can be a kid most days, but I just love the way you're describing that interplay between the two of them and how you see that working out in your family and what that looks like, which is really interesting to me because I think this is part of the thing that you're discovering some things that you wouldn't discover, obviously, if you weren't dealing with the same circumstances. And you imagine now, Leo's in school, Betty's in school, I think, right? So now
Yep.
you're dealing with that whole piece and trying to figure out what that looks like. So you're learning this stuff about yourselves and your family and how life is going to look and where you're going to find joy and all these things. Now we get out into the world beyond your family, and that world can be beautifully beautiful and horrific. It can be lots of different things.
Mm.
So I'd be interested to know in these beginning days of the experience of Leo in school and what that's looking like. What's been maybe easier than you expected? What's been more difficult? If there's parents out there that are maybe gonna aren't there yet, but are gonna navigate this kind of stuff in the system, like what are you seeing there, and what are you learning that might be helpful for yourselves and others?
Yeah, I mean, everything is better and worse at the same time. Like, that's the cop-out answer. I would say, like, yeah, our experience with, government funding and resources and things like that has been a lot trickier. We just haven't seen most funding come through at the time that we, officially had Leo diagnosed and applied for autism funding in Ontario. It was something like a 5 to 7 year wait, is what we knew. So the challenging part about that is that you want to provide therapies and resources and things for your kid while they're as young as possible, because as their brains are developing, obviously that's when you're going to see the most return on that investment, right? So that was really challenging. I would say school in general has been like a bit of a tumultuous thing. So we had started Leo at the public school just up the road from us, and his teachers were amazing, and like we very much feel like it was a God thing. We are people of faith, we're Christians, that Leo's teacher, she had like extra schooling that kindergarten teachers don't need to have, but she had it, and she had experience, if I'm not mistaken, doing therapies with kids with special needs. So she understood these things. She had frameworks. She was amazing to help us understand the school system, and kind of here's what you need to do if you want to maximize all of the resources available to you within the public school. And I don't want to get her in trouble, but like, telling us things that maybe teachers wouldn't be the first people to tell you about how to navigate these things. And so
that's good.
Time and time again, we were just continually blessed by the profound and deep love that she had for Leo. And I mean, prior to that,
she was so great. She was really good at being like kind and gentle with him, but like firm, and like would out stubborn his stubbornness. Like, she had the most perfect balance. I'm like,
sounds like my wife. My wife is kind, yet she outlasts my stubbornness. I think that's my wife's gift too.
We all need that. So yeah, then like we'd switched over to a private school earlier in this school year
when
because
he was going into grade 1.
Yeah, so after 2 years of the public school, going into grade 1, part of that was surrounding us trying to get Leo a one-on-one support person in school, believing that this would be the best thing for him. And that ended up just not being a great experience. The private school that we went to, I think there was a lot of things that Leah and I have learned from that about proactive communication, and not necessarily taking people at their word when they kind of casually tell you, oh yeah, everything's great, and needing to dig in further. And so we ultimately switched the kids back to the public school. And once again, on paper, what would not have made sense and what did not seem to be the better choice ended up in reality being the much better choice. And so, again, going back to your question of like, hey, for anyone listening, any, parents of kids with special needs, and, what is this like, and navigating the system and all that, the biggest thing, that I wish to convey to any parent of a kid with special needs, like I've got a number of books on the bookshelf behind me of, memoirs, different experiences of kids, parents, what have you, of someone that has someone close in their life that has autism. And most of those books are very negative in nature, and very, this has been such a difficult road. And of course, I don't want to invalidate anyone's personal experience, because that's totally valid. But what I feel very quickly when I read those is like, hey, sounds like that person has had a really rough go of it. That's not my experience. And I don't want to get attached to the idea that my life is worse than or lesser than because my son has autism. And so my biggest encouragement, and maybe one of the biggest things that I'm an advocate for, is really trying to encourage people that an autism diagnosis is not a death certificate. Like, your life will go on. Your kid is still your kid. And it, if anything, it can reframe the way that you understand them and help you get to know them in a more intimate and beautiful way. And so, although absolutely that's a difficult, painful process, and again, everyone's challenges are going to be unique, I guess, I feel strongly about, just keep your chin up. Like, feel your feelings, go through that, grieve, what have you, but it does not need to be doom and gloom the whole way through.
We would say, in general, parenting Leo, we wouldn't just umbrella it as parenting is difficult. We would say parenting Leo has difficult moments, but parenting is wonderful.
Wow. Okay. I love, by the way, I just want to, so parenting is wonderful, but parenting has difficult moments. And that's, by the way, true for all parents, regardless of
Yeah.
whether your children are, Harvard academics at the age of 5 or
Right.
not. Parenting is wonderful, and there are difficult moments, and I can attest to that with my own children for sure. So, first of all, I do really love this conversation, and I want to take it in a direction right now that, and I want to be clear again. If you're listening in, I always say you're listening in for a reason. So I'm going to talk to you listeners for a second. I want to tuck a little bit more into Leanne and Aidan's understanding and belief system and how they see it benefiting them. So listen, just full caveat: if that conversation is not for you, you can press pause, you can stop, and you can move on. I'd encourage you not to do that. Just take an open mind about the journeys that we go on and what people find sort of strength and solace in, because this is part of the story that I think is also important for me and to understand. And I have, listeners, you may or may not know, I have my own securitist journey regarding faith in my life. That's still another podcast series one day. But, I want to start with a quote, and I want you to think about this quote, and I want you to respond to it. So C.S. Lewis, who was, with this amazing man who wrote these amazing books like The Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, etc. He was part of this group called the Inklings, contemporary of J.R. Tolkien and others who were quite amazing. But they were also all theologians. They had a lot of ideas about what a God and faith and all these things, and they wove these things into their stories. But also C.S. Lewis particularly had a life of tremendous pain. His wife was very sick for a long time. There is actually a wonderful movie that was made. I forget the name. Might have been called Shadowlands. It's a movie about their life. And he had tremendous pain and difficulty. And he actually wrote a book called The Problem of Pain, which is kind of an interesting book. But he said something in that book which is fascinating. He said, and this is his perspective, and he uses the term God. Again, listeners, you can fill it in with whatever you want. Doesn't matter. He said this: in pleasure, God whispers. In pain, he shouts. Which is an interesting idea about how we hear the divine in our lives. I wish it was opposite. I wish that I heard the divine in my life louder when everything's going well. But C.S. Lewis had this idea that somehow that pain is this megaphone that amplifies the voice of the divine, which is a very interesting way of looking at it. So I've got a question for you. So obviously, you're people of faith. Faith is important to you. Your belief system is important to you. What you believe about God, what you believe, that informs what you believe about people and the value of human life, and what it informs you about how you function as a couple. All these things, of course. So I'm interested to know, how is this supporting your understanding and really driving the kind of values that you want to live out as a couple and as a family? I'm interested in that part of the conversation, and I think it is an important part of your journey because it's who you are. It's not something you just do. It's who you are, and I imagine and I believe that it affects the way you look at your children and yourselves along this journey.
Oh, well, definitely. I believe we definitely believe our children are a gift from God, and yeah, we operate with that there is great purpose, like you said previously. What's the big why? And so we believe in Jesus, and we read our Bible, and so I actually have a verse from John 9 pulled up, and it's a book showed it to me about motherhood and disability, and how it's kind of like the one time in the Bible that it touches on disability, because they're talking about a blind man. And so it reads, verses 1-3, and he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth, and the disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the work of God might be displayed in him. So that's our purpose. Like, that is that God's love would be displayed through Leo, and our love for God and God's love would just be displayed in us as we parent and as we
Wow.
teach our kids.
Well, Leanne, thanks, by the way, for sharing that. What a powerful verse. And again, I just want to be really clear, listeners. Again, some of you, when Leanne reads that, you have a great affinity and affection for it because that maybe is your belief. Some of you, it viscerally, it is just, it makes you, it makes a negative feeling to you. Just don't entertain that. Just stop for a second. Listen to the wisdom in that. And again, whether you see it as an actual thing that happened or not, it doesn't matter right now. Forget all that, listeners. Listen to the wisdom in there. Because what I hear, Leanne, in that scripture you just read is we have this propensity to believe when bad things happen, that means somebody did something terrible and they're being punished. I think that's the macro sort of takeaway a bit in that Bible verse, which is somebody must have done something so terrible that the universe or God or ancestries is exacting punishment on another human and now on your family. And then you've got Jesus in this case saying, well, wait a second. You're missing the point here.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this all wrong. Actually, this is actually because there's this thing somehow that the divine God, Jesus, is all is amplified in weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we have this all totally ass backwards in our society, particularly in North America, because we look at strength, virility, upward trajectory, profits, all these things. This must be the divine. You must be approved by God. But in fact, there seems to be something very different in this wisdom that this Jesus is espousing, which I think is really, really important for us to understand because you clearly don't feel like you've been punished.
No, it's more like, well, what are you going to do with this?
Yeah.
Who cares, in a sense, even like why it's happened or like in the broader stroke of like why is autism happening? Like, yeah,
Right.
sure, like people should research it. But like for us, it's like, well, it is. What are we going to do with it? Like, are we going to sulk? Are we going to,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, no, we're going to praise the Lord that we have a fantastic autistic kid who's teaching our children about patience and understanding, who's
teaching us about patience.
Oh,
and
yeah.
understanding, to be clear. Just to be clear.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And like, he's got behavioral things, but he is affectionate and cuddly and funny and connects with you. And like, there is a spectrum in autism, and we are thankful for where he is in it, that we get to experience with him.
Yeah, I mean, like, being Leo's dad definitely transformed my understanding of faith, and it deepened it because, it's an interesting thing to become a father and to relate to your child. And, as the dad, I didn't carry Leo in my womb. I don't feed him and sustain him in any way. And so, like, a father's bond to his kid, I think is just unique, anyways, from that of a mother. And I remember very, very clearly over and over again in the first year of Leo's life, just holding him and being like, man, this is my flesh and bone. Like, this is my son. Like, what I wouldn't do for you. Like, I just am so in love with you. You're like, this is like, if I love you this much, my belief is that God loves us infinitely more, because we as just fallible, messed up human beings, how could our love ever compare to the love that God has for us? And so when I look at Leo and all of my kids, of course, and I think about, man, like, I would give my life for you in a heartbeat, it wouldn't even be a thought, like, I would lay down my life for you, right? And I think, man, it brings it all back full circle for me of like, well, Christ did lay down his life for us, and it draws me anyways closer to God, because I'm like, man, like, when I get my priorities out of whack, when I'm thinking more about work or my ambitions and dreams and different things, that I'm like, no, like, it's recentering, and it pulls me back to what matters and what doesn't in life,
Wow. And thanks for sharing that. And listen again, guys, if you're listening, and I just want to make a point here, all of us through our journey of life, have times of great blessing and pleasure, and we have pain, and we have maybe the pain, that the kind of pain and pleasure that Aidan and Leanne are talking about in their family. You might have different pain and pleasure in your life. And again, the challenge with pain is that it often leads us away from our understanding of divine things in our lives. Okay. And again, for you, that might be, you describe that as God. For others of you, you describe it differently. That's okay right now. But I would just encourage you, if you've had difficulty in your life and it's led you away from something about what, maybe the essence of our life is beyond just this strange mortal thing we got going on. Hey, I just encourage you, don't lose that along the way, because it's easy to lose that, because we have this idea that if we're on the right track, everything is going to be great. And when we're on the wrong track, then we get punished. And there's this weird dichotomy that we look at as humans about pleasure and pain, and about blessing and punishment, and all of the stuff that goes with this. And there's lots of interesting themes in this conversation, but one of them for me, guys, is that it is easy to interpret when things don't quite go as we plan, that somehow we're off course or we're not on the right track. And that's just a really poor interpretation, I think, of life. And what I love about the conversation is that you guys haven't seen it that way. And I think about this on a very practical level. Leo was your firstborn, and he had autism. You had a choice as parents and as a couple to say, are we going to risk this again? You mentioned you had, I didn't realize this, but you mentioned that you had some miscarriages before. And so you obviously are, you've got a difficult journey when it comes to, having a child, and then you have a child. And of course, you're people of faith. So I can imagine, again, if I get myself into the psyche, you've had some miscarriages. You're probably, seeking God for something better. You now have, you get pregnant. This is the answer. And then you have Leo, and you realize, man, Leo's got some challenges. And then then you have a choice. Are we going to do it again? And what I love about your story is you go, yeah, we're going to do it again. And we're going to do it again. And that's, to me, is such an interesting part of the story. Because I think a lot of people would give up hope. They give up faith, give up whatever along the way. And what I love about you guys is that that's not who you are. And I do think that, there's that thing in that story where it's like, did his parents, or did he sin? And then Jesus's wisdom, no, this is actually about something bigger. This is actually for the glory of God. This is for the glory of the divine. And that maybe is really the byline of the story. For you guys, and for Leo, and for Betty, and for Walt, and for everybody you encounter along the way. And the other thing, because I know you guys enough, and maybe Aidan, you and I talk a lot more, but what I love, Aidan, and I want to just acknowledge this, is you are a person who wants to be kind and compassionate and considerate by nature, which I love. But what I love about this, for me, as I watch you and I listen, and you and I have conversations sometimes in our life about, being kind and compassionate and caring is great, but you're also learning to contend for yourself, your family, and your son. And contend at times when the school system isn't doing its best and people aren't doing their best. And what I love about that is that's really powerful, because I think sometimes we think that it's kind of compassionate not to contend, that being a contender, fighting for something, somehow wars against being kind and compassionate, considerate. But actually, I believe it's all on the table. And so the one thing I would say that I love in my conversation with you, Aidan, and Leanne, I think you're a contender as well, for sure, is that you're learning how to be kind and compassionate to yourself, to your children, and others, and contend with passion and potentially aggression for that which is important for you, your family, your son. And I think that's hard for people to balance those things between them. And I love that, actually, Aidan. When you and I talk, and you just went in and we're fairly firm with somebody about something that's not working. I just love that, because that's what fathers, mothers, parents do for their kids. They contend for them in a world that isn't always in their corner.
Yeah,
And
our
so I
boy
love that.
Aidan, he is fantastic at that. His business skills come through in a sense with all the great
Communication.
communication and confrontation, respectful ways. Like, yeah, it comes out now as a dad and with the schools and making sure we know all we need to know and everything like that to make sure our son is getting, in a sense, all the resources he can. And we had a meeting recently, and oh, he's so helpful there because I'm a little more flustered. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. Like it, I mean, I'm, Tim. I mean, through many different coaching calls over the years with you, I think I've gotten that much more comfortable to have good, vulnerable conversations with people, and certainly with myself, right? To not just accept whatever excuse I want to make for myself, but really dig deep and challenge myself to something greater, right? And so, for me, it comes naturally in the sense of, arguing on behalf of my son, and I would do it for any one of my kids because I just love them so much and I want to give them everything I can, right? And Leo specifically, it's an interesting thing, and it's, I imagine all parents experience this at some point, and for us, it felt like it just came early in our parenting journey of, um, with Leo specifically, Leo especially, anyways, Leo will have challenges in his life that I cannot protect him from, that I cannot save him from. And so what that means for me is in any area where I can help him, push for him, advocate for him, that is not just my duty and responsibility and expectation as a father and as a husband, but it's my joy because I love my son. And, I frequently will summarize, my journey as a dad as saying, if this is what it means to be Leo's dad, I'm in. Like, I don't know what I'm committing to fully, just as I think when you get married, you don't fully know what you're committing to, right? And who I'm sitting next to today, 11 years later, is not the person I married at the altar 11 years ago, right? But it's also supremely beautiful, and I mean, like a fine wine over here in more ways than one.
Oh,
But, like with there you go. Like, you know, being my kid's dad, it's like whatever that means, whatever that takes, I'm gonna do it. And again, for me and for us, it is, we really believe that it is by the grace and the strength of God that we have the ability to do that. Like, I remember, I talked about that kind of 1 week grieving period when we found out Leo had autism. Where we kind of arrived at after a week was like, man, okay, like, we're in this. I'm glad I got you, and you're glad you got me, and we're gonna navigate this. And obviously, like, what's the alternative? Like, give him up to adoption? Like, no. Like, are you crazy? I'm not gonna do that. And for us, we just felt an overwhelming, like, foundational piece about it, to know that we walk in faith. We believe that Leo is loved by God the Father so much more deeply and perfectly than we could ever love him. And so let's do our best and let's give it a go. But we find a lot of peace and refuge in the fact that if God loves Leo all the more than we do, it's not promising Leo a life free of suffering, not in the least, nor us, but there is a lot of comfort that we find in that.
yeah, and that does remind me. I mean, there is a age-old saying, and it is found in the Bible, that apparently God's power, the divine power, uh, is perfected somehow or enhanced in our weakness, not in our strength, not in our virility, not in our ability to control all of our circumstances. It's actually perfected in our weakness, and that, to me, is an important reminder. Again, if you're listening in, you're listening in for a reason. Hey, listen, guys, what a really precious conversation. First of all, thanks for having it with me. Thanks for having it with my listeners. And my hope, again, if you listened in and you're still listening in, that you're asking yourself a subset of questions. And the one thing also, again, I just want to be really, practical for a second. Aidan and Leanne have a complex life, and that there's a subset of other expenses they manage and things they have to figure out as a couple, and what work looks like and how they figure all that out. And Aidan, has a really wonderful job, but he also does this side hustle at the doghouse where he does design work, and he's done lots of great work for me over the years. And you might want him to do some great work for you too. So Aidan, seriously, like if people want to hunt you down, first of all, if they want to connect with you and maybe chat with you about their life or their story, or maybe they got a child with special needs and they want to chat a bit, and or if they want to put your great mad skills to play for them in marketing and graphic design and all the great things you guys do, photography. You probably do some other things. Oh, videography. You do it all. How do they find you, wonderful people?
I mean, easiest way to get in touch with me directly, anyways, would be just doghousedesign.ca. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can see our names somewhere in the podcast description or what have you, if you Google Aidan Hennebry, Leanne Hennebry, somewhere we'll pop up there. We're on social media and all the classic places. But yeah, I mean, I know I speak for the both of us when I say that we would absolutely connect with any parent, especially if you're at the beginning of this journey and feeling very lost, because it was an interesting thing for us, when Leo was diagnosed at the Hamilton Hospital. I don't remember the name of it, but the Children's Hospital there.
Yeah.
And they were trying to comfort Leanne by saying, "Oh, what's great about this hospital is there's like entire floors dedicated to autism," and they were saying to Leanne, okay, today's a heavy day. You're probably not going to hear much more of what we're saying, so come back in a week and we'll really kind of hold your hand and walk you through this. And that was absolutely not true. We felt no hand holding whatsoever.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely,
Put your name in the waiting list for funds, and that's all we do.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Again, like we feel very fortunate that now through the number of years that we've been on this journey, we've stumbled around and found out a few things. And so particularly for any of your listeners in Ontario, Canada, we definitely have some more direction that we can give, and just even sharing some of the different techniques and things that we've learned that have worked with Leo. Because Leo's nonverbal, there's a lot of trial and error in there. And
I want to just say, we do have Leo in some therapies right now.
Yeah.
While we wait for funding, and my parents do help out with that. So I
That's
just want
awesome.
to shout out and say thank you, Mom and Dad, for
yes,
for also loving our son and allowing him those opportunities, because we couldn't afford them right now.
Yeah. That's awesome, Leanne, and thanks for that shout out, because you know what, this is where this is what being real family is.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, it's easy to be, you guys know, we have 2 kids, and Melissa just got married last year, and obviously you guys know Chris and Emily quite well, and our grandkids, and this is where families shine.
Yep.
Or not. Okay. It's in the difficult moments. It's in coming together, and it's being family, and it's pitching in and doing what's required. And it doesn't mean it's always convenient or easy. It just means that it's the right thing to do, and there is wonderful blessing and benefit in it. And I appreciate that acknowledgement of your parents along the way. Guys, thank you so much for this conversation. And again, if you're listening in for a reason. Do me a favor. If something in this conversation has got your attention, and I imagine it might have, because it's a very different conversation that I typically have on my show, do me a favor, DM me or email me at tim@uncommodified.com, and let me know how you're processing all of this. And just remember that if your life is full of a little bit of pain right now, it doesn't mean that you're off course. Oh, there goes my dog. He's barking now because somebody just rang the door. It doesn't mean you're off course in your life. It doesn't mean that you're moving in the wrong direction. It just might mean you're moving into a place where God or the divine or something else actually will be able to be heard more effectively by you in this season than in a season of tremendous great blessing, or what we think is blessing, which isn't actually. Thanks again for listening in. Have a great day. Cheers.